Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. Thank you for watching our show, whether you're watching it live tonight, if you're listening to it later on. We're really happy that you wanted to join our audience, and we appreciate you being here. I see that Jan Coop is watching. Hi, Jan.
Hi, Jan.
Glad to see you in the audience. We're really happy to have you here.
Yes,
I did want to say one thing, and that is that every week, oh, wait a minute. George Dismuke says, here and strapped in, hit the blast off button.
Good thing you're strapped in. That's
Caleb, this is funny. Caleb Pirtle said, always glad to be here.
Hi, Caleb.
That's what I was going to say, that I just wanted to say that every week, Caleb always features our author in our show on their website on Wednesdays.
Right.
And so he never misses, and we appreciate that so much.
That's right.
Caleb, it's very kind of you for sure. Joe Conjal says, hi there, Rob and Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Hi, Joe. Glad you're in the audience, all of you. Yeah. So please like, share. Yes, subscribe to our YouTube, please.
Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. If you aren't watching on YouTube, go to YouTube after the show and subscribe. That'd be great. Always appreciated.
Yes. Like, comment. That's what I was going to say. Comment. We love your comments, especially on LinkedIn. You're going to have to work harder, but you can do it.
The funny thing was, I was going to mention Caleb tonight. I've got it written down right here, and you didn't even know that. But
no.
I wanted to thank him for being faithful to promote.
I know.
All of our guests.
It's so nice.
And I also wanted to give a big thank you to the Fresh Ink Group, Beam Weeks and Gary G's. And a special thanks to Sam, who is the guy behind the newsletter, who always remembers to remind me to send him the information so he can get the information in the newsletter.
So that he could share who our guest was going to be tonight.
Sam is the mastermind behind the whole thing.
Well, look at who's here. Paul Hollis. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Paul.
Hi. Paul says, hi, everyone. We're glad to see you, Paul.
Glad you didn't have to work tonight. That's great.
Me too. And Caleb says, let's see, I just go where the great authors go. And that just happens to be with you. Thank you. And
nice.
So true. They are great. And
You're
Joy
here,
is
right,
no
Caleb?
exception.
So.
Our guest tonight, she is a great
right.
author. We love her.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
She's awesome. Marjorie Deering says, eating supper and watching at the same time. The bad timing is mine. That's okay.
Well,
you can eat. Nobody's going to mind.
We'll try to keep the humor to a minimum so that you don't spit your food out.
Right. And don't talk with your mouth full.
And don't talk with you.
Other than that, you can type though.
Yeah.
There you go.
I want to remind everybody to tune into the Voice of Indie podcast immediately following this show. At the tail end of our show, there's a 2-minute blurb from Voice of Indie that tells you exactly how to go over there. So stay tuned. You can pop in. And tonight's guest is our guest from a couple of weeks ago, Tom Stewart, Canadian adventure author. He wrote Immortal North and Under Big Hearted Skies.
And remember, he wrote a little snippet from
read, and it was captivating.
It was really captivating.
Really good. Episode rewind every Saturday night at 5:30 Eastern time. I know. I wouldn't want to do that. Right here where you're watching live right now, we rerun past episodes. This week it is another Canadian thriller author Frank Talaber.
Oh, I remember Frank. Yeah, he was good too.
And then come on next Wednesday, another live show. We'll be live again, which is kind of rare for December because we're going to be gone the following two. But next Wednesday at 7:00.
Next Wednesday
no, we won't be live.
We are not going to be live because I know where we're going to be, and it's not going to be
strike that,
here.
Reverse it. Our first of two pre-recorded new episodes. It's Robert J. Emery. He's a writer, director, producer. He writes fiction and nonfiction.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he's the author of the award-winning nonfiction novel, America Standing Strong.
Oh, you've got to listen to this, guys. He's awesome.
He's pretty cool.
And he's been a producer and a director here, and he's here in Tampa
area.
And he's so fascinating, you guys. And he's been in this business almost as long as George and Caleb.
He directed and wrote and produced the Directors series.
Yeah, the Directors series. I watched it.
And there's a couple other really big PBS series that he produced. So it's a very interesting gentleman.
He said he's worked with every, old-time Hollywood celebrity and movie star that you can think
except
of.
for George.
Yeah, except for George. Linda Pirtle says, hello, looking forward to meeting Joy. Oh, you're going to really like her, Linda.
And we will do that in just a minute.
Yeah,
but we do also want to mention here's for Voice of Indy. This is Tom Stewart there. And we wanted to mention that the Siren Hunter is available for pre-order right now. If you want to get on that list, that's the let's see if I can do this.
You can't because the picture's up
there, right there.
Okay.
That's where you send your email to get on the list with George. It's available in February. You don't pay anything right now, but you'd want to reserve your copy at a reasonable price at this time. I think it's $12.
Yes.
So I think.
Yes, Joy has a lot to say, so let's bring her on. Yes, definitely.
Keep her from waiting any longer.
Yes.
Okay. Joy York, come on down.
Hi, Joy.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be a guest on your show.
We're thrilled to have you on too.
Welcome.
It's really great. Would you like to tell people a little bit about yourself, or would you like to start off talking about one of your books? What would you like to do?
Well, I mean, for very brief, I grew up in Alabama and spent most of my young life until through college and everything there. So I have there's a lot of that Southern comfort in one of my books for sure. And I've lived most of my life now in the Midwest. And most of my career was in retail management. And I was although I have always been like a storyteller, I got that from my grandmother, and who was an oral storyteller. And so that was kind of where I got my start. And eventually I had more time I took a break that I could spend time doing things in the community and with my son. And that break gave me time to really concentrate on my writing. So that's kind of a little bit about me. I live in the Indianapolis area now. So what else would you like to know?
Well, let me just say, Paul Hollis said, welcome, Joy. I put that up. And George Dismuke said, Crimson Tide, yo.
War Eagle, sorry. I went to
a lot of people here in Florida say Crimson Tide roll. Big deal here.
Well, I do support them when they're not playing Auburn, but most people from Auburn don't.
That's really funny. You know what I would love is if you could. Well, first of all, let me show people the your book. Let me see one of your books. This is The Bloody Shoe Affair. I love that cover. I've always loved that cover. And for people who are just watching and listening and you can't see it, it's a white cover and it has black, it looks like, are they velvet slipper shoes? And they have red blood on them. And so it's, very, very, it stands out quite a bit. I really like it. But what I really enjoyed learning was a little bit of why you actually wrote that book. I think people would
that's
find
a
that fascinating.
story.
And tell them about your cousin. I love all of that so much.
Okay. Well, my inspiration, when I was growing up, most of my relatives lived in northern Alabama and rural areas. And I would visit my cousin. My uncle was the deputy, he was a deputy sheriff, and he ran the county jail. And my aunt, she did all of the food prep work, and she helped him operational. She was really a very strong woman for her time. And my cousin was the same age as I was am. And when I would visit her, they lived actually in a brownstone home that was connected by a hall to the jail. And that hall is where, like in between the two that connected, was where the prisoners would come in. It was also where we would come from the parking lot to go in. So when we came to visit, we would have to go through that. We would go through that hall and see all of these prisoners. Well, my cousin she was adventuresome. She was a little prankster, and she was always into something. And I was the very shy, scared of everything. But you can't help be drawn to somebody that's has all of those characteristics you wish you had. And when I was there, she would sneak into the jail, and she would sneak in cigarettes to the prisoners, and chewing gum, and she would take her. She would play checkers with them in between the bars. And the downstairs of the jail was single cells, and they just had the slots where you get your food. And that was usually for like the more violent criminals. So there weren't really a lot of people in there. And most of the population was upstairs. But she would sneak over, and she would sneak some of the check-ins, little slips and everything. And we would play jailer. And I was always the criminal, and she was always the jailer. And she decided what my crimes were. And then, of course, all the cell doors were open because there was nobody in there. But, she would make me go in, and she'd close the door. And I was like so terrified that door wasn't going to open again.
No kidding.
Right.
Yeah.
So, she really pushed me out of my comfort zone. And she, on the second floor, in this huge brownstone, she had the only bedroom up there, and she was the only child at home. And there was she would crawl out on the roof, which was on the second floor, which was over the front of the jail, of where the porch was. And then she would sneak out the window, and we would go over, and she had her little spine tree that grew up from the parking lot up to this roof, and she would climb on. And when I was there, I would climb in there with her. And that was her spine tree, so she could see what the deputies were, who they were bringing in, and, and see what who the criminals were, because sometimes they would have, they would have to drag them out and there'd be fights or whatever. So she kept her little hands on the pulse of what was going on with that little. And then in my book, that whole scene is very, very vivid to what the original of what I grew up seeing. And downstairs of the jail, there was they didn't use it anymore, and it was just very dark for individual cells. But there was a female trustee, the only one there, and she kind of had her little jail cell turned into an apartment down there. And we would go visit her down there, which scared me to death because, you could look down this hall and there was no lights down there, and I couldn't imagine how she was down there. And one day we were walking down there, and Julia told me, oh, the evidence room is down here. Oh, and there's some bloody shoes, and they were from this murder. This woman was killed, and late at night, sometimes you can hear her calling, "Where are my bloody shoes?" So when I started writing, that plot point was born for me. So I developed the Bloody Shoe Affair, and although the characters are fictitious and they're from a fictitious town in Mississippi, not North Alabama, but they were inspired by that, and so in the book, the Bloody Shoe Affair, there are two characters very much like Julia and I, one just very vivacious and troublesome, and one that is very shy. And when it's Christy is the shy and Lily is the little prankster. And when Christy is coming to visit, the night before, Lily has seen a deputy drop some bloody shoes, and everybody is talking about this brutal murder, but they won't tell her anything because they know she's Miss Nosy and will get into it. So that is, the whole thing is trying to figure out what happened, and through chance, they are able to talk to the man who is arrested, and the girls decide he is innocent. So then the plot becomes, trying to prove that in this little small town, as like 13-year-old girls, that he didn't do it. And so that's kind of all of that kind of, they say, write what you know. There was so much rich material. I just couldn't let that one go.
Yeah, that's great. We do have quite a few comments, so let me run through those very quickly. First of all, Linda Pirtle said, "I recognize traces of an Alabama accent." And Joe Conjal had to say, "Syracuse orange." And Jan Coop said, "I absolutely loved this book. The characters are so memorable." That's
good. Thank you.
What you want to hear, right?
That's very nice comment.
Every author wants to hear that.
Yes, every author does want to hear that. And we appreciate you sharing that, Jan. And Caleb says, "Alabama is a great place for a mystery writer to have lived. Everybody you meet is guilty."
Probably of something.
Now, Joe Conjal and Linda Pirtle both asked questions that I myself asked. I myself asked Joy yesterday because I just had to know. For one thing, Linda says, "Where is Julia now? Not in jail, I hope." And Joe Conjal says, "Is your friend," it was her cousin actually, "is your friend a writer also?" Because I wanted to know that too. What is she doing, the little Dickens?
Well,
welcome.
Actually, she ended up being she's a very creative designer, like home designer. And so she worked in interior design a lot, but she has had 3 boys and was a big football mom, soccer mom, baseball mom. She was just she's always been very involved in the community. And she's still, actually, we were talking today, and, she's always had that I have to be doing something kind of thing. But she's put it into very positive things. She's very involved with her church, and she just does so many things. But, I thought at the time, oh my gosh, she's probably going to go in law enforcement or something. And I thought, well, maybe it's just she needed some normalcy in her life. But when I started writing the book, it's because she lived in with the jail till I think she was like 15. And then they moved out in the country when her father left the position. And she said, "Joy, I have not thought of all of those things in so long. I cannot believe the things I did and how dangerous they were." She was always aware. And, her mom and dad taught her to be very aware and everything. But sometimes that little devil may care kind of took over. And she's like, I just forgot all of those things.
Well, she's a mother now, so it must horrify her to think of her children going and playing checkers with prisoners in the jail by themselves, by the way, and sneaking in cigarettes and chewing gum when she was under 15. I mean, my goodness.
I have two questions. Is the jail still there?
Yeah, and is it haunted?
No.
Oh,
that
well, I
isn't the
want
other
to know
one.
that.
That's your question, not mine. But that was a good question too.
It
So we'll say
was.
3 questions. And the other question is, did she ever try to sneak in a saw in a cake?
No, but no, they actually tore probably about a few years before my Uncle Casey left. They tore down the jail completely, made it a parking lot.
Oh.
And I do have actually pictures on one of my banners of the jail and the house and everything. But and then they built a courthouse and they moved it in. But it's funny. No, she didn't. But a cute little story, real quick, that she told me about is there were some male trustees too, and one of the trustees said that they were trying to fix something and then they needed a sledgehammer. And they asked her. And so she got the sledgehammer for them, thinking they were going to fix this. And I guess a couple of days later, my uncle came in and he found a bunch of the prisoners were drunk and he couldn't figure out how they possibly were drunk. And she said what they had done is they went to a room that was adjoining where they kept like the moonshine and alcohol and stuff like that, because they did have a lot of, they did, bust steals and stuff back then. They may now today, but I don't know. But they hammered through the wall to where they kept the liquor. And she said they never knew where they got it. She said when I found out, they never knew where they got the sledgehammer from.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that so funny?
That is.
But she had no idea they would do something like that. But it was naivety.
It was too little to think of that.
Yeah.
We need to take our first break. And when we come back, we will continue. We'll have a book giveaway. And I think Joy might even read a little bit out of one of her books for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
So hang on. Don't go away.
We'll be right back. Word from our sponsor.
Welcome to Magnolia Bluff, Texas, a small town in the heart of the Texas Hill Country near Burnett Reservoir. A town where everyone's business is discussed at the local coffee shop. A town where neighbors look out for each other. A town not insulated from murder and mayhem. Which begs these questions. Who is responsible for breaking into quaint Victorian homes? And how are poodles, ghosts, drug cartels, and a Ponzi scheme connected with a serial killer? Caroline McCluskey, the town's librarian, catalogs books using the Dewey Decimal System. When a black and white poodle puppy arrives unannounced, she calls him Dewey. Now, Caroline must catalog events to identify a serial killer in her town. Pick up your copy of the Dewey Decimal Dilemma, now available on Amazon.
They thought the siren was dead. In the novel Siren Song by author George Dismukes, James Harmon shot her twice. Several people saw her dead body sinking slowly into the abyss. But now, in Siren Song 2, evidence suggests that she may still be alive.
She killed that boatload of people. It was her! And she's just getting started!
Angie, that's impossible.
The cold chill up my spine tells me it's not impossible. We've got to start all over again. And this time, do it right.
Siren Song 2. The story continues. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Get your copy today.
At Indie Booksource, you can shop by genre or by author, and you will be buying direct from the author's main purchase link. We offer hundreds of titles in formats that include ebooks, paperback, hardbound, and audiobook. Support an indie author. Visit indiebooksource.com today. And we're back.
We're back.
Welcome back. Before we do the book giveaway and give all the addresses where we can reach Joy, I want to bring up her other book and talk about that briefly too, so people will know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
This is called Genuine Deceit, also a really interesting cover. You have really interesting book covers. And I did want to mention the Bloody Shoe Affair, as you can tell from the synopsis that Joy gave us, is a young adult book, a young adult fiction. And Genuine Deceit, however, is not,
It's more adult suspense, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. You want to tell us a little bit about Genuine Deceit?
Yes. Genuine Deceit is it's about a successful young woman who she lives in Chicago, and she grew up in her hometown is in Northeast Ohio, and she gets called home because the grandmother that mostly raised her has been murdered. And when she goes into the house, almost immediately there is an attempted burglary. And so the police believe that this wasn't, since there was another attempt, that this wasn't a random burglary. There is something else going on. So obviously she's not safe in the house, but she has a lot of things to do. So her lifetime friend still lives in the area, Maddie, and she asks her brother-in-law, Aiden, who is just kind of early retired from the Navy SEALs, if he would help her to make sure she's safe and kind of navigate through the investigations with the detective and everything. And Aiden believes that a ring, which is actually, there is one on the cover,
Yes,
that he has seen of her grandmother's, that he believes that's more valuable because they live in a very modest home, and her grandmother has always raised her very frugally. And so he tries to, suggest that maybe that ring is more valuable, that somebody has seen it than what she thinks. And she immediately takes him to a big pink box that says Princess Box, and all of this colorful jewelry that, it's just this cut glass, colorful diamonds and ruby looking things. I played with this all my life. We made mud pies with it. I've probably lost parts of the stones. This is just play jewelry. And that ring was actually in there that he had seen. And, but then in looking through the house, they find a sealed container that contains something hugely valuable that it's not been opened for decades. So Reagan can't ignore the fact that something is not right, that doesn't fit the lifestyle or anything. And she begs him to please help her find out what all of these things mean, and what is real and what isn't real, and how this would tie to her Nana's murder. And she quickly finds she's in danger too. So they kind of follow the investigation, and kind of the leads kind of take them on an adventure across the country, trying to solve a decades-old mystery as to and how it has come back to impact them now.
That sounds wonderful.
It sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it does. It sounds really good, really good. Let me bring up how you can reach Joy. And that's not going to work.
No, that won't do it. Try this one.
Yes.
There you go.
Oh, I haven't been doing this long, folks. Okay, yes, I have. Joy's website is joyyork.com. That's easy. JOYYORK. That might be tricky for people. It's a YY. JOYYORK. Okay, but when you think her name is Joy York, then that makes it much easier. Okay, her Facebook is Joy York. This is so easy. And Twitter is at Joy York Author. LinkedIn is Joy York parentheses book author parentheses end parentheses, I should say. And Instagram is Joy York Books. Now, those are all the places that you can reach her. And her email is joyyork.author@gmail.com.
So the book giveaway tonight, everybody get ready. The first 3 people to email joyyork.author@gmail.com will win an ebook copy of choice.
So it'd be either The Bloody Shoe Affair or Genuine Deceit.
Right.
Both of which sound really good. And it's very interesting because they're very different kind of books. I mean, I read young adult books. Yeah. I don't think that's...
I have an idea. If you win a book, buy the other one too.
There you go.
Good plan.
But Genuine Deceit sounds much more much more suspenseful, I think.
There are lots of twists and turns and lots of surprises up until the very last. I mean, it's kind of been described, and some people have reviewed it as kind of a roller coaster ride. And, you know, Reagan just starts to not even recognize her life. And so it is a very suspenseful, very thrilling, and it is adult.
Yeah.
I mean, not like.
I know what you mean. It's not young adult.
Not young. It's not young adult. It's some matured themes.
It isn't 2 teenagers trying to solve a murder. It's
exactly.
It's a grown-up book.
It's a grown-up book, right?
The grown-ups are in charge. Yep.
Right.
But you know, as Jan Coop said, she absolutely loved The Bloody Shoe Affair, and adults can really enjoy young adult books. Sure. I do all the time.
Absolutely.
Actually, I've had a lot of adults that have read it. It's set in 1968, and so there's a lot of, you know, of the I guess the fashions and the cultures and the music through the time and everything. Yeah. That is for some people very relatable, and which is a little nostalgic.
Yeah.
And some things, and so, and there's a lot about like family too.
It's like Stranger Things. Our kids absolutely love Stranger Things because they were that age in the 80s. So they're old now, but they love Stranger Things for that reason. So I do think that when you read a period piece like that, if that was when you were young, it's a lot of fun to read those kind of books. Yeah. You know, it brings you back. You know.
Yeah, we talked about it yesterday. Would you still be interested in reading a portion of one of your books?
Sure.
Which one would you like to read?
This one I think is going to be from Genuine Deceit.
Okay,
great.
And just to kind of where we are in here, Reagan and Maddie have just released her grandmother's body, and so they're going to the funeral home to meet with the director, and they're driving, and it's sleeting, and the weather is bad. And they just pulled into the driveway of the funeral home, and they're hit from behind, like somebody slid into them, and they kind of spin around, and they're facing the what they think is the funeral van.
Okay.
Okay. After taking a couple of moments to calm her nerves, Reagan got out of the car and carefully walked toward the van. The sleet had turned to large snowflakes that were coming down so hard the windshield of the black van was almost covered, making it impossible to see the occupants. When she reached the driver's window, there was no one in the front seat. She assumed they must have gone to the back to check on their cargo, which she hoped didn't involve a toppled over coffin with a dead body. A shiver went up her spine at the thought. When she reached the back of the van, the tinted rear door windows made it impossible for her to see inside, so she knocked. "Hello? Anyone in there? Are you hurt?" Receiving no response, she put her ear to the glass. Nothing. The driver had disappeared into thin air. She decided to go back to the car to get paper and pen to write down the tag number. But just as she turned to leave, she heard the back door latch click open. "Wanted to make sure you were..." Reagan's words were stopped short when a gloved hand shot out of the door and painfully clasped her forearm. Before she could respond or even get a look at him, a dark cloth sack was slid over her head, drowning her in darkness. Panicking, she could barely comprehend what was happening. As she gasped for air and reached to remove whatever was covering her face, rough hands grabbed her around the waist and threw her hard against the side of the van. Her right cheekbone smashed against the frigid metal, while her hands were pulled tightly behind her back. When the shock subsided enough for her to put two coherent thoughts together, she realized someone was trying to abduct her. She let out a piercing scream and struggled to free her hands while kicking blindly at her attacker. Her tight pencil skirt and the ice under her boots made maneuvering difficult, but she fought frantically to get away. As one of her heels slipped out from under her, it forced her weight to drop, loosening her right hand from his grip. Taking advantage of the brief reprieve, she flung her arms up and over her shoulder in an attempt to scratch his eyes, but her fingers clutched only a knit face mask instead of bare skin. Not to be deterred, she continued to claw at his face until two of her fingers slipped through a hole into wetness. Ignoring the churn in her stomach from the realization she was touching the monster's saliva, she dug her fingernails into his lips until she heard his angry groan, and he yanked his head out of her reach. His arms tightened around her waist, pulling her snug against his chest. His hot breath on her neck sent cold shivers down her spine. "Stop struggling before I break your arm," the man threatened in a thick accent. "Let me go," she yelled, screaming and squirming to get loose. She slammed her head backwards with all of her might, trying to smash his nose. But the shift of her weight threw them off balance, and they fell hard on the icy pavement. A sharp pain seared through her elbow. Her attacker quickly flipped her over, face down, securing her with a knee in her back and one hand wrapped around her neck. Melted ice seeped through the cloth over her head and burned her cheek as she gasped for air. "Oh God, please don't let me die," she prayed, tears stinging her eyes. "Move again and I'll snap your neck," he said between clenched teeth. "Not in this lifetime." It was Maddie's voice, flooding Reagan with hope. She wasn't alone.
That was great.
Good.
It was terrifying. And I could feel it.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Chris Chrisman says, "Hello, Rob, Joan, and Joy. Sorry I'm late." That's okay, Chris. Oh my gosh. But that was, and Chris Chrisman also says, "Awesome reading." It was really
very
good.
Thank
He
you.
said it felt real. It did feel real. Felt like we were there. Felt her
Yes, indeed.
terror.
Yes. Whew.
That would be horrible, wouldn't it? I'm glad we only write about this stuff. We don't live it.
Especially when it was cold outside, right?
Yeah.
When you're writing and you start like getting emotional yourself,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
really feeling it because you're in there, and the way I write, I'm going where the characters are taking me.
Right.
So when I'm feeling it, I feel like then maybe I'll convey that.
Maybe you'll convey it to your reader.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're
Exactly.
feeling it along with you as it being passive.
Well,
Yes.
that was really, really good. Okay, we need to take our last break here. Come back. We've got some more to talk about.
Got some more comments.
So nobody go away, okay?
Madison Jackson loved being a cop. A young girl is raped and murdered near Burnett Reservoir. Madison vows to get justice for the child. Madison travels to the heart of Mexican cartel country. She is kidnapped, tortured. Will Madison ever make it home? Justice by Kelly Marshall, only at Amazon.com.
Many secrets are hidden within the darkness of the jungle. Behold, this one about a man, a woman, a black jaguar, and an ancient Maya legend. Two Faces of the Jaguar is a novel by George Dismukes that will take you deep into the jungle and capture your imagination until the last word. Two Faces of the Jaguar is book one of a trilogy. Two Faces of the Jaguar, where only the adventurous dare to read.
Two Faces of the Jaguar, The Lost City, and The Jaguar's Quest are available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Two Faces of the Jaguar, the book people are talking about. Get your copy today.
In a world where advancing technology is outpacing crime solving, the O'Rourke team continues their relentless pursuit of justice. Bioprints is the first book in the O'Rourke crime novel series where it's high-tech crime versus old-fashioned detective work. Visit carternovels.com or amazon.com and check out Bioprints today. We're back.
We're back. And like I said, we have some comments. Joe Conjal says, I like you asking the authors to read from their books. It should become a regular feature. Nice job, Joy. And yeah,
Thank you.
we've been enjoying it too.
Yeah.
So that's why we have been asking people every week to read from their books. It's fun.
Who better to read?
Yes.
The
And
person that wrote.
yes, because she knows the voice that she has. So
Exactly.
yeah, it's really good. Caleb said, I've always heard that the reader doesn't feel fear unless the author does. I believe Joy has shivers. Yeah. It's funny that happens to you, but it does. It really does. We did something to one of our victims that made it very difficult for me to go into storage units for years. Well, actually, I haven't been in years, so I'm not sure I can go.
You probably won't have to. Yeah.
Marjorie Deering says, I'm enjoying the podcast a lot more than our chuck roast, which is very good, by the way.
Oh, you made me hungry. Now we're going to have to order out or something, I guess.
No, we're not.
No.
And
Oh.
Marjorie said, yeah, chuck roast. Marjorie Deering said, yes, I enjoy the readings too. Good. I'm glad to hear
Good.
from all of you that you enjoy the readings, because we're really enjoying them. And you know, some of them have been really just amazing like that. I was right there.
Yeah.
feeling every smack and terrified about her getting her neck snapped off, her arm broken, neither of which sounds like a fun thing to do.
No.
It's really, so scary.
So what's coming up for Joy? What you got on the drawing board?
Well, I've just finished a book, Protective Instincts, which is another suspense thriller. It's about it's kind of a totally different type. It's about an author who is a famous author that's very self-absorbed, and his name is Sebastian Bartoli, and he had his first bestseller when he got right out of college, and he writes crime fiction, and now he's had like 8 or 11 books. So he's a brand, and he's totally insulated. I mean, he has a whole group of people that take care of him, and all of a sudden he's approached by, or his people are approached by, a notorious businessman that has ties to organized crime, or that's the rumors, and he wants him to write his autobiography. Well, everybody's really worried about that, because nobody wants to be in the position to know things that they shouldn't know. So his team kind of get together, because they organize his life. He's kind of gotten, spoiled, and they get together and decide this guy won't take no for an answer. And they hear he's coming to see him himself. He's not dealing through other people. He's coming to see him because he wants this to happen. So they make this elaborate plan for him to disappear, where on a supposed sabbatical, and nobody's going to know where he is. So he ends up in a lake house in Gunnersville Lake. And when he gets there, he's supposed to be in total seclusion, nobody around. And he looks out the balcony, and there he sees a car come and a young woman get out and go into it's a caretaker cottage. And what the owner who rented this didn't realize that his daughter was supposed to be coming with a young woman, and she is and then the daughter canceled at the last minute. So Morgan is by herself, and she's a kindergarten teacher from North Georgia, and she is very unfiltered and boisterous. And she was raised by a grandfather that was part of her life was kind of off the grid. And so she has, with survival skills and all these kind of things. And when she gets to this cabin, she finds out that nothing's working. So she goes to the big house and the big cabin to a very irritated author who's wondering where this young woman came from, who looks so young, though she's 25. He looks like she's so young. He would be afraid to let her in. He calls and finds out who she is, and if he didn't know and they got back at who this woman is, he wouldn't let her in the house because she looks so young. And while they're there having dinner, her cabin is broken into, and the door can't be repaired. So he lets her come back. Then all of a sudden, these huge men show up, and obviously he realizes they found him. And so she goes into her little mode, and she saves their bacon and gets them out of there. And then it just becomes this huge adventure of, she finds out that there's a lot of things she didn't know. Her grandfather just died. She didn't know about him. He has a checkered past. And all of these things are coming after these two people, and they kind of bond, totally different people that you would never put together in a million years. they're kind of on the run together. And right now I just threw it out there for a few publishers just to see, because I was planning on doing it myself and may still end up, but it's being reviewed right now. So I'm kind of waiting to see whether I'm going to go ahead, because I'm not going to spend I've done others myself and learned a lot, and I really enjoy being an indie author. So
Sure.
we'll kind of see. I'm waiting for this, but
What's the name of that one again?
Protective Instincts.
Protective Instincts. Okay.
Yes.
Protected or protective?
Protective Instincts.
Protective.
Protective, like detective.
So
Yes.
we don't know when that'll be out because you're waiting on these publishers.
I'm gonna give it like a couple of months, and then then I'm just gonna move. So, but I also have a sequel to the Bloody Shoe Affair. It's called
Awesome.
the Jailer's Daughter's Revenge, and in this one, Lily's dad gets shot, and the whole preface is finding out who did it. And so, and they've aged like a year or so, and so they're a little more mobile. And so this one it's a little darker, and that this is this affects them, and it's one's dad, one's uncle. But anyway, that one is like in the re-edit stage. I kind of put it on the shelf because I couldn't cut it. It was 120,000 words for it, but for a young adult, that's like ridiculous.
They're not going to read that many words.
No.
No.
Break it into a trilogy, and you got it though.
There you go.
So that one is right there next on the edit list.
Well, we'll be looking forward to that one too. We've got a number of comments here. Chanel, which by the way, hello Chanel.
Hi, Chanel.
So glad to see you're feeling well, and you can be listening to the podcast and watching us. Says Stephen King is an egotistical person. Met him 3 times. I've never met him, but that's too bad to hear, because if any of you watched Ann Hillerman, she's a New York Times bestseller, and she's humble as can be and the sweetest lady I've ever met.
Yeah, totally real.
Yeah. Chris Chrisman said, I missed it, Joy. Are you traditional or indie, and which do you like better?
Oh, I'm indie, but like I said, I just thought I would throw it out there, and actually I heard from someone like within a week. So I thought, well, I'm going to give it a chance,
Give it a shot. Yeah.
And see where it goes, because, I'm not doing this to be rich. It's like I have to write, and I want it, and I've done a lot of, when I decided I wanted to write, I did a lot of, joining organizations, national writing organizations, and workshops and conferences, and all of the things, because you can have a great story, but if you can't if you can't make it exciting, and it can't be cohesive, and and if it's not written correctly, people won't read it no matter what you put out there. You kind of have to put you have to put the time and work in.
We have a few more comments here. Leslie Prentice says, Joy, you've always been an amazing woman and storyteller.
Thank you, Leslie.
And Jen Coop says, Joy, where do you get the ideas for these latest books?
Well, Genuine Deceit is really interesting. I was sitting around thinking, what am I going to do? And I thought, most of us live in pretty average houses, and it's like, what if something had been right under your nose your whole life, and you didn't even know it? That it was right there, hiding under the surface. And that's kind of where Genuine Deceit came from. And the fact that all of this comes, a lot from something she played with her whole childhood, that ends up that could be worth millions of dollars. Wow. Another thing, a friend of mine I was talking to, she told me that she got she lost a relative, and the only thing they found in her safe deposit box was one picture, an old black and white picture that nobody had any idea what it was. And I thought,
Wow.
what if I mean, that would have driven me crazy, And so there is some of that in this book of like, that's where the decades old thing came from. Because it was a decades old picture that they'll never know, And so that kind of prompted, with those two things, I picked a couple of characters and, just they grew, you have an idea how they're going to go, but then they develop their own personalities, and you hope they grow and develop and as they go through.
Oh, yeah. Chris Chrisman says, the best writers are the most humble from the many authors I have met. And he also says, exactly, agreeing with you, he has to create, he has to write. Yeah. If we're doing it to get rich, we're going to be sorely disappointed.
Might want to buy some lotto tickets.
Yeah. You have better luck of
probably
being a
the odds
millionaire.
are better. Yeah.
Chris Chrisman said, my first published book, I wrote the plot in 1979, but wasn't good enough to write until 2021. Yeah, I think that's true with a lot of people, Chris.
Yeah.
And Joe Conjal says, not sure if you've mentioned this and I missed it, but are you a pantser or a plotter?
Read my mind.
Definitely a pantser. Although I don't go all the way to the end. I may stop and get another idea and then go back and maybe edit a little bit to add something back in to change the character a little bit or to change how that person's reacting to something, and then go forward. So I don't totally just move straight in a line.
Fly by the seat of your pants.
Because they'll do something and I'll think, and it just totally surprises me. And I'll think, now that's not going to match what I just said about you. You're changing on me here.
That's right. They do.
But I don't think, how this is going to end. I just see where they're going and they take off. And
there you go.
And
you're along for the ride.
Yeah.
You're along for the adventure.
Yes, and it is.
I've noticed a lot of your protagonists are on an adventure.
Yes, they are.
Marjorie Daring said, I think every fictional story idea starts with the premise, what if? What if?
What if I don't write this book?
That photograph thing, that's intriguing to me. Who was that person and why was it so important to them?
Right.
Which reminds me of the book that George Dismukes is just writing now. He's writing a new book, and it's like, we read some of the opening paragraphs, and it's like, okay, who is this person? Why are they here? What's going to happen?
It generated so many questions, that
and I think that's a really good story.
That's a good way to start.
So that photograph is like, all right, that's a good story. How many books do you have published? Chris Chrisman asks.
Oh, right now, 2.
2. That would be, as we've said earlier, let me put them up there again. That would be The Bloody Shoe Affair, which is the young adult one, and Genuine Deceit. And you can see the ring that she was talking about right there.
And some other jewelry.
Yes. Like. Yep. Costume jewelry.
Is that on a globe or a map? What is the background there?
Honestly, I'm not positive. I think it might be like on a book. I'm not sure.
Or marble or something.
I had a graphic designer I gave them some ideas. And
it's a very interesting.
Not sure how they actually did that.
It's pretty.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's pretty turquoise, and it shows things off well. Yeah. So, we have some more comments. Let me see. George Dismukes, thank you for mentions. You're welcome, George. And Chris Chrisman said he loves this cover. I do too. I love both those covers very much.
At first, I was a little afraid that it looked a little too romantic.
Oh,
look at it immediately, and then there is a little romance story going through, but it is definitely not a romance.
Well, I hope there's some romance with a Navy SEAL and a young woman in trouble.
But no, it's mostly thriller suspense
It's
through it.
Oh my goodness. This has been great. This has
Yeah.
really been amazing. And I see that we've gone a little bit over, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Do you
The,
want to
wait a minute.
get something else here?
Caleb said, I think the characters in Bloody Shoe Affair should be in a never-ending series. I think a lot of readers agree with you, Caleb, and that's why I was glad to hear that she's written a sequel to that. But I do think that it's like a Nancy Drew type story. They can be getting into all kinds of trouble, those two.
Mm-hmm.
And Marjorie Daring said, the blood under the ring suggests otherwise, that it's not a romance. and Chris Christmas said, a good show always runs long, LOL. And thank goodness that the manager of our radio station doesn't mind that he wants us to take as long as we need to take. And so we will.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.
I really enjoyed it.
We really enjoyed having you here. Joe, wait a minute, second. Joe Conjal says, super show as always. Thanks, Joy, and of course, Rob and Joan. And Paul Hollis says, another interesting and intriguing show.
Yeah.
I know, these authors are just so interesting.
It's amazing.
It is, and nice.
Let me ask you this. What kind of advice do you have for somebody who hasn't quite put the pen to the paper yet and doesn't know quite where to start? Do you have any little tiny bit of advice for them?
I would say that, get your idea and just write. Just write and write. Don't worry about, and people that I've talked to that have asked me that before, they're like, oh, but I stopped because I can't spell it or whatever. I said, it doesn't matter. Just go, get it down, get your thoughts down, and don't worry about the minutia and all your punctuation and all of those things. Get your thought down and don't give up, because that deters people, because that's why you have copy editors, and that's, you can go back and fix all of that stuff. But if you second guess yourself and just say, because I don't know everything, that I can't write, it doesn't mean you can't. You can, you'll learn as you go, but you need to get your story down, and you can worry about fixing it later. But I think that hangs up people so much, is that, oh, that sounded stupid. Should I go back and do that? Well, no, maybe you wouldn't really say that, but it'll get better as it goes.
Yeah. Right.
And your first book can always be a throwaway.
Right.
It often is.
Well, and, even if it's a short story, or if whatever you're starting out with, you have to put it down.
Or magazine article.
Right. You have to get something down to say, and then you can either change it, or you can say, okay, I did that, so now let me do something else better or different or something.
Chris Crispin says, thank you for the show. George Dismuke says, I agree with the Nancy Drew comparison. And Chris Crispin said, it's nice to see the person behind the author. And that's exactly why we did this format and agreed to do this show, because that's what we wanted to do, was for people to get to know the author. And it's been a lot of fun for us, and I hope for the audience too. Chris Christmas says everything can be fixed in editing. Yes, it can. And gosh, don't we just love editing? We have to do so much. It's so awful. It's so painful. And each book gets better. Yeah, that's right. And each book gets better. And yes, my first book will never be published, LOL. Right? Oh my gosh. We have one that's embarrassing. The one that took place in a place similar to Middle Earth.
That one, yes. Yes, we don't talk about that.
That's when I decided I really didn't want to be a fantasy writer or a science fiction writer, though I love both genres.
Disavow any knowledge of that one.
Was just bad. George Dismuke says, great show, great advice. And then Chris Christmas says, TMI, guys, LOL. No, it isn't, Chris. Everybody needs to know that they're not the only ones that do wonky stuff.
Well, that's for sure. All righty. Well,
Chris Christmas said there's always good advice. There is. That's another thing. Having all these authors on and we talk to each other and we learn things. It's just wonderful.
That's right.
It is.
That's right. I agree.
It's amazing.
All right. Well, Joy, thank you so much for joining us.
It was really
Thank you again for having me. I really and thank everybody for like their comments and listening and everything. I really appreciate it and enjoy it. And I learned so much. The indie authors are like the most wonderful people in the world in their support of people. It astounds me every day, you know, when I put things out on social media and people, you know, it just surprises me. The people that will read or comment or review and do things to support you is what thank you so much.
And that will help you, you know, it's amazing. Can you put that one up? Chris Chrisman said Stephen King threw away his first Christine.
That's true.
Oh. Yeah.
And that wasn't his wife. That was the book. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
If it were George.
Yeah, if it was George, that's a whole different story.
Just teasing you, George.
A little humor there. So we're going to move you over to the side. Thank you so much for joining us. And stay right where you're at, though, over there. And we'll be back with you in just a minute. Let's see, what do we got going? Next week, we've got pre-recorded new episode, right? Robert J. Emery, writer, director, producer, and author of the award-winning nonfiction novel America Standing Strong. It's a good show. We had a good time with that one.
He's fascinating, really.
He is. He's a very fascinating character.
Very, very nice man.
Yeah, and then the week after, the 21st, is going to be David Tyndall. And then on the 28th, our very own Chris Chrisman is going to be our guest. And then we pop into the new year with a bunch of surprises. So
we have to put this up because this is what he's known for, Leslie. Leslie Prentice said, love the dad jokes, Rob, LOL.
She missed, that's bad jokes.
They're groaners, yes. Yeah. He's known for that. No, that's not for public view. That is private to us.
What? It's on your hand. What are you talking about? Anyway.
There are more.
That's true. All right. So everybody stay tuned for the commercial that tells you how to go to the Voice of Indie podcast on blogtalkradio.com tonight. And you'll enjoy that time. You can even call in and talk
like old time radio.
Live broadcast, yeah. Ask your questions and so on.
Oh, look at what Joe Conjal says. Can you put that up? Joe Conjal said, Rob needs a drum set so he can hit the rim shot after his jokes. Okay, he can do that.
I can do that.
Oh my gosh.
You probably don't want me to do that.
I don't want him to do that. Do not encourage him to do that. He ran through a bunch of things before the show tonight and said, isn't that funny? What did you just do?
I don't know. Let's see. Well, it's not there, so.
Oh.
I was looking for the drum set.
You were going to do it.
We've got the drum set, so maybe next week, huh?
No, it's not. It's
maybe. Not. It could happen.
It's annoying.
Stay tuned. It won't be next week. It'll be on the Chris Chrisman's show.
No, it's extremely annoying. I hate those soundtrack things. And no, he doesn't need a drum set or a rim shot. You keep showing these private comments.
That's not private.
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. All right. So I think that's about all we've got to talk about tonight. What do you think?
I think we're done.
Okay, done. Until next time.
That's all, folks.
Live Every Wednesday, your Voice of Indie hosts Beam Weeks and Stephen G's welcome authors, musicians, publishing industry pros, artists, and assorted creative guests for an exciting interactive hour. Call in during the show or post questions and comments on Twitter for responses in real time. Meet your favorite indie creators, learn inside tips, network, and promote your work. The link for each week's show is pinned on Twitter atop @VoiceOfIndie, and you can receive the link every Wednesday morning in your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter at freshinkgroup.com. Check out Voice of Indie every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio and catch hundreds of episodes archived everywhere from our websites to our YouTube channel and Spotify.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DB.com.
You've been listening to WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows.